I recently vended at my first artist alley, which meant I had a ton to learn about what I needed and how to get started. And today I want to share all of that info with you from the perspective of somebody who's still a beginner myself, and especially what I did breaking in at first when I had no portfolio and no booth set up to show. Finding events to vend at in the first place can be hard. There's a lot of them, and not all of them are worth attending, especially starting out. There are websites and databases like animecons.com and Facebook events or groups that might help you find events in your area, but for me personally, the biggest source of information was Discord. I'll link 2 Discord servers that I'm in the description, but a lot of people in those Discords have their finger on the pulse of events, and for example, will post applications for events when they open. There's also a lot of discussion about those events, and you can search for event names and see how other people did at those conventions, or post a question about it yourself. I personally learned a lot by lurking in those Discords for like a year. It's an embarrassing amount of time to just sit in a Discord and lurk, but I learned a lot that way. My biggest recommendation for starting out with artist alleys is to keep local. It might mean different things, since about as local as you can get in the Midwest where I live is like at least an hour away if you don't live in a big city. But I was able to find a list of conventions in the Midwest, and I based my search around conventions in Ohio and the surrounding states. This was important for me getting my foot in the door because I didn't want travel costs to be too high. That can be a really big barrier to entry, and especially when you're traveling and spending a lot of money on either gas or a plane ticket and then also a hotel, that can really eat into your profits. And if the convention that you're traveling to is small, that might be a loss. That's especially where those Discords come in handy, because people are really happy to answer questions about whether or not a convention is worth traveling to. Talking to actual people is more helpful for me than just having a database or a list, especially because it can kind of be difficult to find accurate attendance numbers for some conventions. Applying to conventions when you have no table set up can seem impossible. A lot of applications ask for a portfolio or for booth photos, and how are you supposed to do that when you've never built a booth? So what I did was I created a mock-up in Affinity Designer, which is basically Adobe Illustrator, but not a subscription, of what I thought my table setup might look like. And then I submitted that image alongside a link to my online store. I applied to 3 conventions using that mockup, and I was accepted to all 3. So if you currently don't have a table display, try creating a mockup in the art program of your choice to help you get your foot in the door. If you use Clip Studio Paint, I'm gonna put a link in the description for some 3D assets that are gonna be really helpful for this. After I made this mockup, I created a page on my shop's website with the mockup, some product photos, and a little About Me section, effectively making a portfolio page for my in-person vending. Not all conventions are gonna ask for a full portfolio page. Some just want some product examples, but I find having it all on one page helps. You can also use services like Card to create a standalone page if you don't have a website. What I wouldn't recommend doing is using something like social media, especially if you post images on social media that are more personal. Like I post a lot of, cat pictures or memes or Gengar. I love my son. Don't ask why he's wearing a hat, okay? Don't ask why he has a toupee. It's a long story. Conventions have been more competitive and harder to get into than they were several years ago, from what I've heard, so don't feel discouraged if you're getting waitlisted or rejected. There's a lot of applicants right now, and conventions only have so much space. Literally. Like, physically, their venue can only hold so many artists. Event applications will be evaluated in 3 main ways: juried, lottery, or first come first served. Juried, like the name implies, involves the con staff judging each table and handpicking applicants. The criteria with which judges evaluate your tables is not very transparent a lot of the times. They might make those judgments based on the quality of your table, whether they think you might be a good fit for their demographic, or just like market saturation. Applications that are accepted through a lottery system are totally random, although they might go through a quick jury process at first to make sure it's not stolen artwork before it goes into the lottery. That's usually called juried lottery. And first come first served means if your application goes through, you're basically guaranteed a table. Although the same possible looking for stolen/AI artwork jury might apply to first come first served tables too. If you're not getting accepted through juried events, try getting your foot in the door with first come first serve events. You'll have to be quick about those, but if you get your application in, that's a foot in the door. Conventions also tend to book their artist alleys 6 or more months in advance, so start looking and applying early. And if the application date has passed on an event you really want to attend, make a note of it so that you can look in advance next year. This isn't something that I did, but if you're having trouble with applications, or if you don't have the stock to fill a full 6-foot table, try asking an artist friend of yours or looking in table share sections in Discord servers to see if somebody is willing to split a table with you. Not all conventions allow table sharing, but some do, and it can be a good way to test the waters without needing to fill a full booth or pay the full table fee. After applying and being accepted to a convention, you'll need a way to display your products. My biggest tip is to build upwards. Don't just have things laying flat on your table. So, of my booth supplies, the first thing that I bought were these pink cube organizers. I had to get them in pink. These are a great starter item because they allow a wide range of possible arrangements, and you can tape, clip, magnet, or even Velcro your products or signage to these cubes. For my signage, I printed them on my home printer and then I glued them to foam core board, and I Velcroed that to my pink cubes. I think if I was going to do this again, I would get them printed professionally so that I didn't have to deal with cutting foam core. Do not like, 0 out of 10. But these are nice because if I want to change my signage, all I have to do is take off the Velcro part and then Velcro a new sign to that spot. All of this makes my display very modular, so if I need to rearrange something or remove something, for instance, if a convention does not allow stickers, I can take that off. To mount my keychains to my foam core board, I got these little phone charm hooks. Though you can also use command hooks or wire organizers. And I attached all of my keychains to these with jump rings. This makes them a little more difficult to steal. They're still not theft proof, but it's better than nothing. I also highly recommend getting a set of clamps to keep your display from tipping over if somebody knocks into the table. Especially with larger cosplays that may be trying to squeeze through the aisles of an artist alley, you just want to make sure everything is secure. Great places to look for decorative display items can be the dollar store, Daiso, or the Target Dollar Spot, or Bullseye's Playground. I have always thought that name was stupid. These places can have things like baskets or dividers to display things like buttons and stickers. They can have little shelf raisers if you need to elevate your products. Say you make like a 3D item, like a plushie, you can put them on a shelf to help elevate them. Or other things that genuinely I probably can't think of right now. I just like to peruse those kinds of spots every now and again. As soon as I had either purchased or made enough of my display supplies, I put together a practice table at home based off of the mock-up that I made earlier. This let me update my portfolio with a staged photo of my booth and then apply to more conventions with that. I did this practice table a few times, and every single time I learned more about how to more effectively display my merchandise. And it let me get faster at building the display, which is good because sometimes you don't have very long for a setup. As for my non-display items, at minimum, you want a way to take payments. I recommend getting a money belt instead of a lockbox. This way you can keep your cash secure to your person. I've just heard way too many horror stories about lockboxes being stolen, and I just don't want to take that chance. You can take only cash, but it's more likely that your customers are going to want to pay with card. So for that, I used SquareUp. And luckily, if you're a new user to Square, they will send you a MagStripe reader for free. This plugs into the headphone jack of your phone, or if you're on iOS, you can get a lightning jack, lightning port plug version. But this allows customers to swipe their card and pay using Square on your phone. The downside to the MagStripe reader is that it's less secure and it limits people who use payment methods like Apple Pay. The Square tap and chip reader, or contactless reader, which is what I got, is about $50, though I think it goes on sale sometimes. I really appreciated having more options available for payment and being able to go mostly contact-free with tap payments to try and mitigate con crud somewhat. I think the $50 tap reader is worth it, but if you're on a limited budget, at least start with the MagStripe reader. Also, if you use an iPhone, the Square app on iPhone does also accept contactless tap pay, but I'm on a cheap old Android, so I didn't have that option. You can always upgrade your booth more over time. I had online sales to help out fund some of my table expenses, which allowed me to buy things like a customized banner with my brand name on it. And other not as necessary tech that I invested in included a battery bank, which I only ended up using, honestly, about the end of the day on Saturday. But it was good to have peace of mind in case anything did need to be recharged. I also purchased a portable Wi-Fi router from Simo. This thing saved my butt because I couldn't connect to the event Wi-Fi at all during my first convention. It's not as necessary if you have an unlimited data plan on your phone, but I don't. So this thing was a huge relief. I hope by now you've got an idea on how to find and apply to events and put together your first portfolio and table. It's a lot of information, but if I can go from this to this, then so can you. Also, if I missed anything and you have any questions, let me know and I will be happy to answer them in the comments. I can't help but think that I should have started doing artist alleys earlier. Like, I keep thinking I set myself back years by not getting into this scene, like 10 years ago. But I have to remember that 10 years ago, I wasn't even thinking about selling prints and other art merch. I was about to graduate with a degree in game development, and I thought that would be the career that I was in for the rest of my life. You know what though, not everybody's trajectories are the same, and mine just took a little bit longer to get here. But if you're in the same boat, know that I'm right here with you. For a full recap on how my first artist alley went, including a breakdown of earnings and expenses, check out my video on Anime Crossroads here. Till next time, stay weird.